Part 1. The Declaration. The Great Hall of Nexus Prime was silent. 12 species sat in a circle, each one older than human civilization itself. Their representatives had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had crushed rebellions before the rebels even knew they were rebelling. And now they had gathered to discuss one small problem: humanity. High Arbiter stood at the center of the hall. He was tall and thin, with skin that looked like cracked stone. His eyes glowed with a pale blue light. He had lived for 10,000 years, and in all that time he had never seen anything quite like humans. "They spread too fast," said, his voice echoing through the chamber. 60 years ago they could barely leave their own planet. Now they have colonies on 40 worlds. They trade with species we have never even contacted. They laugh at our warnings. The representatives murmured among themselves. This was the real problem, not the expansion, not the trade, the laughter. Ambassador raised one of his 4 hands. He was shorter than the others, with smooth green skin and large black eyes. "Perhaps we should try diplomacy first. Humans are young. They do not understand our ways." Turned to look at him. "We sent them 14 formal warnings. Do you know what they sent back? Jokes. They sent us jokes, Ambassador. One message was nothing but a picture of a small Earth animal with words written on it." "A meme," said quietly. "They call it a meme." "I do not care what they call it. It is disrespect. It is defiance, and it will end today." Raised his hand, and a document appeared in the air before each representative. The words glowed in every language of the council. "A declaration of war," announced. "We will teach humanity their place in the galaxy. We will show them what happens to species that do not bow to the council." The vote was quick. 11 species voted yes, only voted no, but his vote did not matter. The decision was made. The declaration was transmitted across every frequency, to every corner of human space. It was long and formal, filled with ancient phrases and legal terms that humans probably would not understand. It promised total war, complete destruction, the end of human civilization if they did not surrender immediately. On the council station, everyone waited for the response. Far away in orbit around Earth, the flagship Defiance floated quietly in the darkness. It was not the biggest ship in the human fleet, but it was the most important. Admiral Park Minu commanded it, and where Minu went, the fleet followed. Lieutenant sat at her station on the bridge. She was young, only 28 years old, but she could speak 47 alien languages. When the transmission came in, she was the first to read it. Her eyes went wide, then she started to laugh. "Admiral," she said, turning in her chair, "you need to see this." Minu was a calm man. He had hair and a face that rarely showed emotion. He had fought in 3 wars and negotiated peace in 2 more. Nothing surprised him anymore. He walked over to station and read the message. He read it again. Then he looked at with one eyebrow raised. "They want to destroy human civilization," explained, still smiling. "All of it, unless we surrender right now." Minu nodded slowly. "I see. Send a response." "What should I say, sir?" Minu thought for a moment. Then he said, "Noted, good luck." Typed the message and sent it. 2 words, that was all. On Nexus Prime received the response. He stared at it for a long time. Around him, the other representatives began to whisper. This was not the reaction they expected. Where was the fear? Where was the panic? Where were the desperate pleas for mercy? "Good luck," said, his voice rising. "Good luck." Said nothing, but inside he felt a cold weight in his stomach. He had studied humans. He had read their history. He knew things about them that the other representatives did not know, and he knew that this war would not go the way imagined. On Earth, the news spread quickly. Within 1 hour, every human in the solar system knew that the Galaxy Council had declared war. Within 2 hours, betting pools had opened on how long the war would last. Within 3 hours, the memes had already started. Galaxy Council declares war, one popular image read. Anyway, here is my coffee. People laughed. They made jokes. They went to work and came home and lived their lives as if nothing had changed. To the watching council spies, it looked like madness. Did humans not understand what was coming? Did they not know that the council controlled 1,000,000 worlds and 10 million warships? But humans understood perfectly. They just did not care. In a small laboratory on the dark side of the moon, Doctor watched the declaration on a tiny screen. He was an old man with messy white hair and glasses that were always dirty. He had spent 40 years working on things that most people could not even imagine. Finally, he muttered to himself, "Something interesting." He turned back to his work. On the table before him lay blueprints for something called Project Sunrise. It had taken 20 years to build. It was never supposed to be used for war, but was a practical man, and he knew that everything could be a weapon if you were creative enough. On Mars, Sargent gathered his soldiers for a meeting. They called themselves the Laughing Wolves, and they were the best ground fighters humanity had. Was a big man with a scar across his face and eyes that had seen too much death. "The Council wants a war," he told his soldiers. "They think we will break, they think we will run, they think we will beg." He smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "Let us show them what humans do when someone threatens our home." The soldiers cheered. They painted new symbols on their armor. They checked their weapons and told jokes and prepared for the fight of their lives. Captain sat in her fighter, running system checks. She was the best pilot in the fleet, and everyone knew it. She had flown missions that should have killed her a dozen times. She had a habit of doing impossible things and then pretending they were easy. Her communication unit buzzed. It was Admiral Menu. "Captain," his voice said, "I have a special mission for you, something a little crazy." Smiled, "My favorite kind, sir." "Good, report to my office in 1 hour, and bring your sense of humor. You are going to need it." She laughed and closed the channel. Outside her window, the stars burned cold and bright. Somewhere out there, the Council was preparing its great armada. Somewhere out there, millions of alien soldiers were sharpening their weapons and practicing their war cries. And humanity was laughing. Not because they were confident, not because they were arrogant, but because they had learned over 10,000 years of blood and fire and survival that fear was a waste of time. Fear did not stop bullets. Fear did not win wars. Fear only made you slow and stupid and dead. So they laughed instead. They laughed at the Council. They laughed at the Armada. They laughed at the whole galaxy because the galaxy had no idea what it had just started. The war was coming, and humanity was ready. Part 2, First Contact, the Violent Kind. Commander Thrace stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the stars. Behind him stretched the greatest armada the galaxy had ever seen. 10,000 warships, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a planet. Soldiers from 100 different worlds. The full might of the hegemony, the military arm of the Galaxy Council. He had fought in wars for 300 years. He had conquered species that thought themselves invincible. He had never lost. And yet, something about this mission made him uneasy. "Commander," his officer said, "we are approaching the Sol system. Human space begins in 10 minutes. Thrace nodded. He expected to find a defense fleet waiting for them. He expected desperate ships and frightened soldiers and maybe some kind of surrender signal. That was how it always worked. Young species saw the armada coming and they broke. Every time. But when the armada reached the edge of human space, they found nothing. No fleet, no stations, no defense at all, just empty space and a single small shuttle floating alone among the stars. The shuttle was playing music, some kind of human music, loud and cheerful. Thrace frowned. "What is this?" His officer scanned the shuttle. "One life form, Commander, human, female, no weapons." "Open a channel." The screen flickered, and a young woman's face appeared. She had short black hair and a smile that seemed far too relaxed for someone facing 10,000 warships. "Hello there," she said. "I am captain of the Earth Defense Fleet. Admiral Park Min-yu sends his greetings and invites you to tea before the battle begins. He says he has a very nice collection from the mountains of Korea." Thrace stared at her. In 300 years of war, no one had ever invited him to tea. "This is not a joke, human," he said. "You are facing the combined fleet of the hegemony. Surrender now and some of your people may survive." Tilted her head like she was thinking about it. "That is a very kind offer, but I think I will pass. The Admiral makes excellent tea. You really should try it." "I do not want tea. I want your surrender." "Well," said, still smiling, "I guess you cannot always get what you want. Safe travels, Commander. I will see you soon." The screen went dark. The shuttle turned and flew away, still playing its strange music. Thrace felt a cold feeling in his chest. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. But he had his orders and the Armada was waiting. "All ships forward," he commanded. "Take us to Earth." The Armada moved into the Sol system, 10,000 ships flying in perfect formation. They passed the outer planets without resistance. They approached the asteroid belt, that ring of rocks between Mars and Jupiter. That was when everything went wrong. The first asteroid exploded without warning. It was not a big explosion, but it was close enough to destroy 3 ships instantly. Then another asteroid exploded, and another, and another. In seconds, the belt was full of fire. Thrace grabbed his command chair as his ship shook. On his screen, he watched as hundreds of asteroids came alive. They had engines, they had explosives, they were not rocks at all. They were weapons. "Pull back," Thrace shouted. "All ships pull back." But it was too late. The humans had spent decades preparing this trap. Every rock, every piece of dust had been turned into a bomb. The Armada flew straight into it, and now they were paying the price. 400 ships died in the first 10 minutes. Their shields could not stop rocks moving at impossible speeds. Their weapons could not target enemies that looked like empty space until the moment they exploded. On Nexus Prime, High Arbiter watched the battle feed with growing horror. He had expected a quick victory. He had expected to see human ships burning. Instead, he saw his own fleet being torn apart by rocks. "They weaponized asteroids," he whispered. "They turned rocks into weapons." Ambassador stood beside him, his face carefully blank. "I told you they were different." "Different? This is insanity." "No," said quietly, "this is human." Back in the battle, Commander Thrace finally pulled his surviving ships out of the asteroid belt. He had lost 400 ships, and they had not even reached Earth yet. Worse, intercepted human communications revealed that the humans had a name for this attack. They called it the Welcome Party. Thrace felt something he had not felt in 300 years, fear. But he was a soldier. He pushed the fear down and gathered his remaining ships. 9,600 warships were still more than enough to destroy one small planet. He ordered the fleet to fly around the asteroid belt, taking the long way to Earth. They were halfway to Mars when the second trap appeared. From behind Jupiter's moons, a fleet emerged. Human ships, hundreds of them, moving in patterns that made no sense to his tactical officers. They were smaller than his ships, faster and stranger. And leading them was a single large vessel with words painted on its hull. The Defiance. Admiral Park Min-yu's face appeared on every screen in the hegemony fleet. He looked calm, almost bored. Behind him, his bridge crew was drinking coffee and making jokes. "Commander Thrace," Min-yu said, "you could have had tea, now you get war." The human fleet attacked. They did not fight like any species Thrace had ever seen. They flew too close to his ships, so close that his weapons could not track them without hitting his own fleet. They used his ships as shields against each other. They flew into spaces that should have killed them and somehow came out alive. Captain led the fighter squadrons. She took her ships directly into the engine exhaust of a hegemony dreadnought. The radiation should have fried them instantly. Instead, they used it to hide their signals, then turned and attacked the dreadnought from behind, where its shields were weakest. The ship exploded in a ball of fire. His voice came over the radio, cheerful and calm. "I saw that move in an old movie," she said. "Always wanted to try it." Thrace watched his tactical display with growing horror. His ships were dying, not because the humans had better weapons, not because they had more ships, but because they fought wrong. They broke every rule of galactic warfare. They did things that should not work, and somehow they always worked. 3 hours into the battle, Thrace ordered a retreat. He had lost 2,000 more ships. The humans had lost maybe 50. As his fleet fled toward the outer system, a message arrived from Admiral Menu. "The T offer still stands, Commander. Think about it." Thrace did not respond. He sat in his command chair and stared at the stars and tried to understand what had just happened. He had fought 100 species. He had crushed armies and burned worlds and never lost a battle. And now, a species that had only been in space for 60 years had just made him run away. On Earth, the news of the victory spread quickly. People celebrated in the streets. They had won the first battle. They had shown the galaxy that humanity would not break. But Admiral Menu did not celebrate. He sat in his office and looked at the reports. They had won, yes, but this was only the beginning. The Council had 1,000,000 worlds. They would send more ships, more soldiers, more weapons. His door opened and Captain walked in. She was still wearing her flight suit, still smiling from the battle. "Good fight, sir," she said. Menu nodded. "Good fight, but it will get harder from here." "I know." She sat down across from him. "What is the plan?" Menu was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "We keep laughing, we keep fighting, and we show them that no matter what they send, we will never give up." Smiled. "Sounds like a plan to me." Outside the window, Earth turned slowly in the darkness. 7 billion humans lived on that world. They were counting on Menu to keep them safe. He did not know if he could do it. He did not know if anyone could. But he knew one thing for certain. As long as humanity could laugh, they could fight. And as long as they could fight, they had a chance. The first battle was over. The war had just begun. Part 3. The Doctrine of Laughter. The war spread across the solar system like fire. Every day, new hegemony ships arrived from distant stars. Every day, the battles grew larger and more desperate. The humans were outnumbered 10-1, then 20-1, then 50-1. By every calculation, they should have lost within the first week. But humans did not follow calculations. Captain flew her fighter through a storm of weapons fire. Behind her, 4 other pilots followed in tight formation. They were all that remained of her original squadron of 20. The rest had died in the battles around Saturn, around Mars, around the stations that humanity had built over decades of expansion. "Left turn on my mark," said into her radio. 3, 2, 1, mark. The 5 fighters turned as one, diving beneath a hegemony cruiser so close that their wings almost touched its hull. The cruiser's guns could not track them at this range. They were too close. Smiled, "Fire everything." 5 sets of missiles launched into the cruiser's belly. The explosions ripped through its engine room, and the ship began to fall apart. Squadron flew through the debris, emerging on the other side with no damage at all. "Nice flying," one of her pilots said. His name was Park, and he had been with her since the beginning. "Thank you," replied. "I learned from the best." "Who taught you?" "Old action movies. You should watch more of them." On the hegemony flagship, Commander Thrace watched another one of his ships die. He had lost count of how many he had lost now. Thousands. Tens of thousands. The reinforcements kept coming, but so did the human tricks. They fought in ways that no sane species would fight. They used their own ships as weapons, ramming them into enemy vessels when their guns ran empty. They hid in gas clouds and asteroid fields and the radiation shadows of planets. They sent fake signals and false messages and distress calls that led his ships into traps. And through it all they laughed. Thrace could hear it on the intercepted communications. Jokes, songs, stories. The humans talked and laughed even as they died. It was the most terrifying thing he had ever witnessed. On Mars, the ground war was even stranger. The hegemony had landed 50,000 soldiers on the Red Planet. They were elite troops, trained for planetary conquest, equipped with the best weapons in the galaxy. They expected to crush the human defenders within days. Instead, they found Sergeant and his laughing wolves. Had only 300 soldiers under his command, 300 against 50,000. The numbers were impossible, but had been fighting impossible wars his whole life. "Remember," he told his soldiers before the first battle, "they expect us to fight fair. They expect formations and strategies and all that military stuff, so we are not going to do any of that." His soldiers grinned. They had painted their armor with bright colors and cartoon faces. Some had written jokes on their helmets. One soldier had decorated his gun with flowers. "We fight like humans," continued. "We fight dirty. We fight smart. And we never, ever stop laughing. Because as long as we are laughing, they know we are not afraid. And when they realize we are not afraid, they will start to wonder if maybe they should be." The hegemony soldiers advanced across the Martian desert in perfect formation. Their commanders watched from orbit, expecting an easy victory. What they got was chaos. The humans attacked from everywhere and nowhere. They used tunnels that had been dug over decades. They set traps that buried soldiers in Martian sand. They appeared behind enemy lines, fired a few shots, and vanished before anyone could shoot back. And they sang while they did it. One hegemony officer reported hearing human soldiers singing a strange song about never giving up while they destroyed his entire squad. He survived only because he played dead. In his report he wrote, "They are not soldiers. They are something worse. I request immediate evacuation." His request was. 2 days later his unit was destroyed. Back in space, Admiral Park Menu studied the battle maps in his office. They were winning individual battles, but the big picture was getting worse. More ships arrived every day. The Council was serious about destroying humanity. His communication unit buzzed. It was Doctor, calling from his laboratory on the moon. Admiral said, "Project Sunrise is ready. We can use it whenever you want." Menu was quiet for a moment. He had seen the plans for Project Sunrise. He knew what it could do. It was their final weapon, their last option, the thing they would use only if everything else failed. "Not yet," Menu said. "We are not desperate enough yet." "When will we be desperate enough?" Menu looked at the battle maps. The enemy fleet was growing larger every day. His own fleet was shrinking. They were winning battles but losing the war. "Soon," he admitted, "maybe very soon." On the hegemony flagship, Commander Thrace received a strange message. It was an invitation from Admiral Menu for tea. Thrace stared at the message for a long time. It was probably a trap. It was definitely a bad idea. But he was tired of fighting blind. He needed to understand these humans. He needed to know why they refused to break. Against all his training, against all his instincts, he accepted the invitation. They met on a small station between their fleets. Neutral ground. No weapons, just 2 commanders and a pot of tea. Menu was already waiting when Thrace arrived. He looked older in person, with lines around his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. But he smiled when he saw Thrace, as if they were old friends meeting for lunch. "Commander," Menu said, "thank you for coming. Please sit." Thrace sat. He watched Menu pour tea into 2 cups. The smell was strange but pleasant. Why, Thrace asked. Why did you invite me here? Minu pushed a cup toward him. Because you are the first council commander who has not run away after the first battle. That means you are either very brave or very stupid. Either way, I wanted to meet you. You should have surrendered, Thrace said. You cannot win this war, you must know that. Maybe, Minu sipped his tea, but winning is not really the point. Then what is the point? Minu set down his cup and looked at Thrace with tired eyes. The point is showing the galaxy that we will not go quietly. The point is making sure that whatever happens, they will remember us. The point is fighting until we cannot fight anymore, because that is what humans do. Thrace felt a strange emotion. It might have been respect. Why are you not afraid? Minu laughed. It was not a cruel laugh or a mocking laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had made peace with death a long time ago. Do you know how many times humans have almost destroyed ourselves? Minu asked. Wars, plagues, climate collapse. We came within inches of extinction at least 5 times before we even left our planet. We looked into the abyss so many times that we started calling it by its first name. He leaned forward. You threaten us with death, with destruction, with the end of everything we have built, and you know what I think when I hear those threats. What? I think again, Minu smiled. We have been here before, Commander. We have stared at the end of everything and survived. Your council is just the latest in a long line of things that tried to kill us. You will fail like all the others. Thrace left the meeting changed. He did not know it yet, but a seed had been planted in his mind. A question that would not go away. What if Minu was right? What if humans were something the galaxy had never seen before? What if this war was a mistake that the Council would regret forever? He returned to his ship and sent a private message to Ambassador. 3 words that would change the course of the war. We were wrong. Part 4. The Truth About Humanity. The war was changing. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador read Commander Thrace's message again. 3 words. We were wrong. Such simple words, such terrible words. He had been waiting for someone to understand. Now finally someone did. But understanding came too late. High Arbiter had committed everything to this war. The Council could not back down now. Too much pride, too much blood, too many promises made to too many species. The only way forward was through. Closed his eyes and thought about what he knew of humans. He had studied them for decades. He had read their books and watched their movies and listened to their music. He understood things about them that no one else on the Council understood. They were not a young species. Not really. Yes, they had only been in space for 60 years, but their civilization was 10,000 years old. Their history was written in blood and fire and endless struggle. They had been fighting for survival since before most Council species had even developed language. That was the truth that the Council did not understand. Humans were not new to war. They were experts in it. They had been at war with themselves, with nature, with the very planet that gave them life, for longer than anyone could remember. And they had won every single time. Far away on a small ship floating through the darkness between stars, Commander Thrace thought about the same things. He could not sleep anymore. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Minu's face. He heard Minu's words. Again. That one word haunted him. How many times had humanity faced extinction? How many times had they survived? What kind of species could look at death so many times and still laugh? His communication unit buzzed. A report from the front lines. More ships lost. More battles that should have been won but were not. Thrace turned off the unit. He did not want to read more reports. He wanted answers. On Earth, the mood was changing too. The first weeks of the war had been full of jokes and memes and celebration. But now, as the death counts rose, the laughter became quieter. Not gone, never gone, but different. Harder. Lieutenant sat in her quarters on the Defiance and stared at a photograph. Her brother, smiling in his pilot uniform. He had died 3 days ago in a battle near Jupiter. His ship had been hit by enemy fire. He had managed to crash it into a hegemony cruiser, taking 200 enemy soldiers with him. A hero's death. Everyone said so, but did not want a hero. She wanted her brother back. Someone knocked on her door. She quickly wiped her eyes and said, "Come in." It was Admiral Minu. He looked tired. He always looked tired these days. "Lieutenant," he said softly, "I heard about your brother. I am sorry." Nodded. She did not trust herself to speak. Minu sat down across from her. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Then Minu spoke. "I lost my wife in the first war I ever fought, and my son in the second. I know what you are feeling right now. The anger, the grief, the question of whether any of this is worth it." Looked at him. "Is it worth it?" Minu did not answer immediately. He looked at the photograph at the young man's smile, at the dreams that would never be fulfilled. "I do not know," he admitted. "I have asked myself that question 1,000 times, but I do know one thing. Your brother believed it was worth it. He chose to fight. He chose to sacrifice himself so that others could live. That choice meant something to him. It does not bring him back." "No, it does not." Minu stood up. "Nothing will bring him back, but we can make sure his sacrifice was not wasted. We can keep fighting. We can keep laughing. We can show the galaxy that even when we lose the people we love, we do not stop." He walked to the door, then paused. "Take whatever time you need, Lieutenant, but when you are ready, we need you. The war needs you. Humanity needs you." He left, sat alone with her photograph and her grief. And slowly, very slowly, the anger began to change into something else, something harder, something stronger. Determination. On Mars, Sargent faced a different kind of battle. His 300 soldiers had held the line for weeks, but now there were only 80 left. 80 soldiers against 40,000 enemy troops. They were hiding in an underground bunker, surrounded on all sides. The enemy had cut off their supplies. They had no reinforcements coming. By every measure, they were already dead. But refused to accept that. "Listen up," he told his soldiers. "I know things look bad. I know we are outnumbered. I know we are running out of food and ammunition and hope, but I have been in worse situations than this." One of his soldiers, a young woman named Lee Sara, laughed bitterly. "Worse than this? When?" Smiled. "Let me tell you about my grandmother. She grew up during a great war when our country was destroyed. She had nothing, no food, no home, no family left alive. Everyone told her she was going to die, but she refused. She survived on nothing but anger and hope for 20 years until she finally found peace." He looked at each of his soldiers. "That is what we are, survivors. It is in our blood. It is in our bones. We do not give up because giving up is not something humans know how to do." He raised his weapon. "So here is what we are going to do. We are going to rest for 2 hours. Then we are going to attack, not defend, attack. Because they expect us to hide and wait to die, and we are not going to give them what they expect." The soldiers stared at him. Attack, with 80 people against 40,000. It was suicide. But then Sora started to laugh. Not a bitter laugh this time, a real laugh. "You are crazy, Sergeant," she said. "I know. I like it." One by one, the other soldiers began to smile. They checked their weapons. They ate their last rations. They wrote messages to families they might never see again. And when the 2 hours were up, they followed out of the bunker and into the Martian night. They attacked at dawn. 80 soldiers against 40,000. It should have been a massacre. It was a massacre, just not the kind anyone expected. Had spent his 2 hours studying enemy positions. He knew where the weak points were. He knew where the commanders were hiding. He knew exactly how to cause the maximum chaos with the minimum resources. His soldiers hit the enemy camp like ghosts. They destroyed supply depots. They killed commanders in their beds. They set fire to ammunition stores and fled before anyone could stop them. By the time the enemy organized a response, and his soldiers were already gone, vanished into the tunnels they knew better than anyone. The enemy lost 3,000 soldiers that night, lost 12. When the news reached Admiral Menu, he laughed for the first time in days. It was exactly what he needed to hear. Proof that humans could win even when everything said they should lose. But he knew the truth. They could not keep this up forever. The enemy had too many ships, too many soldiers, too many resources. Sooner or later, humanity would run out of tricks. He called Doctor. "Doctor," he said, "how long until Project Sunrise is ready for full deployment?" "It is ready now," replied. "It has been ready for weeks. I was just waiting for you to ask." Minyu nodded slowly. The final weapon, the last option, the thing that would either save humanity or doom them forever. "Stand by," he said. "I think we are going to need it soon." He ended the call and looked out the window at Earth. 7 billion people were counting on him. 7 billion lives that would be destroyed if he failed. He would not fail. He could not fail, because failure was not something humans knew how to do. The final battle was coming, and humanity would meet it with laughter and fire. Part 5, Project Sunrise. High Arbiter stood before the council for the last time. His skin was darker than usual. His eyes burned with cold fury. He had expected this war to last days. Instead, it had lasted months. Thousands of ships destroyed, millions of soldiers dead, and still the humans refused to surrender. "Enough," he said. "We end this now." He raised his hand and a map appeared in the air. It showed the Sol system, Earth at the center, the tiny blue dot that had caused so much trouble. "We will commit every ship, every soldier, every weapon. 300,000 vessels will converge on Earth. We will burn their planet to ash. We will destroy every colony. We will erase humanity from the galaxy as if they never existed." Ambassador stood up. "This is madness. We have already lost too much. The humans have proven themselves. Let us negotiate. Let us find peace." Peace turned to him with disgust. "They laughed at us. They mocked our warnings. They destroyed our armies with rocks and tricks and refusal to die properly. There will be no peace. There will be only extinction." The vote was unanimous. Even the species that had started to doubt the war voted yes. They were afraid of what he would do to them if they refused. The greatest fleet in galactic history began to move toward Earth. On the Defiance, Admiral Menu received the news. 300,000 ships, enough firepower to destroy 100 planets, and humanity had less than 1,000 ships left. He called his senior officers to a meeting. Captain, Lieutenant, the commanders of every remaining ship and station. They gathered in the war room, their faces tired but determined. "You all know the situation," Menu said. "The Council is sending everything. We cannot win a direct battle, not against these numbers." "Then what do we do?" asked. Menu looked at each of them. These were the people who had fought beside him for months. The people who had watched their friends die and kept fighting anyway. The best humanity had to offer. "We use Project Sunrise," he said. Silence fell over the room. They all knew about Project Sunrise. They all knew what it meant. "Sir," said slowly, "if we use that weapon, there is no going back. We will be changing everything." "I know," Menu's voice was heavy, "but we are out of options. The Council will not stop. They will keep sending ships until we are all dead, unless we show them something that makes them understand." He pressed a button, and Doctor's face appeared on the screen. The old scientist looked calm, almost peaceful. "Doctor," Menu said, "explain Project Sunrise to everyone." Nodded. 20 years ago, we started building a network of satellites around the sun. The original purpose was terraforming. We wanted to use solar energy to heat cold planets, to make them suitable for human life. He pressed a key, and a diagram appeared. Dozens of small satellites orbiting the sun, each one equipped with focusing arrays and guidance systems. But the same technology that can warm a planet can also destroy a fleet. We can direct solar flares, control coronal mass ejections, turn our own star into a weapon. Whistled softly, you can make the sun shoot at them. In simple terms, yes, almost smiled. The Sol system has always been our greatest weapon. We just needed to figure out how to use it. Minu took over. Here is the plan. We let the enemy fleet enter the inner system. We let them think they have won. And then, when they are committed, when they cannot retreat fast enough, we activate Project Sunrise. What about our people? A commander asked. What about the stations and colonies in the inner system? We evacuate everyone we can. The civilian ships leave tonight for the outer colonies. We keep only military personnel in the kill zone. Looked at him and us, the defiance. Minu met her eyes. We stay. Someone has to guide the enemy in. Someone has to make sure the trap works. That will be us. No one spoke. They all understood what Minu was saying. The Defiance would likely be destroyed along with the enemy fleet. They were volunteers for a suicide mission. Stood up. Well, it has been a good run. I always wanted to go out with a big explosion. One by one, the other officers nodded. They had known from the beginning that this might happen. They had made their peace with death a long time ago. Then we are agreed, Minu said. Begin evacuation of all civilians immediately, all military personnel to battle stations. We fight one last time. The next 12 hours were chaos. Millions of civilians loaded onto transport ships and fled to the outer colonies. Stations were emptied. Bases were abandoned. Only the soldiers remained, waiting for the enemy to arrive. On Mars, Sargent received orders to evacuate his remaining soldiers. He refused. We stay, he told the messenger. This is our home, we defend it. His soldiers agreed. 43 of them now, down from the original 300. They had fought too hard and lost too many friends to leave now. Recorded a message for his daughter on Earth. She had already been evacuated to the outer colonies. He hoped she would never have to listen to this message. He hoped he would see her again. But he did not believe it. Hey, little one, he said into the camera. If you are watching this, things probably did not go well, but I want you to know something. I did not fight because I thought we could win. I fought because some things are worth fighting for even if you lose. Your future, your freedom, your right to live without fear. He paused, blinking back tears. We are still laughing here. That is how you will know we have not given up. Keep laughing, little one. No matter what happens, keep laughing. He ended the recording and went back to his soldiers. They were singing again. Old songs from Earth. Songs about hope and courage and refusing to die. The enemy fleet arrived 3 days later. 300,000 ships filled the space around Mercury. More ships than humanity had ever seen. More firepower than humanity had ever imagined. High Arbiter himself led the fleet, determined to witness the destruction of Earth with his own eyes. The Defiance waited near Venus, alone. The rest of the human fleet had scattered, hiding in the outer system to protect the evacuation ships. Laughed when he saw the single human vessel. Is this their final defense? One ship. Commander Thrace stood beside him, silent. He had tried to warn. He had tried to explain that humans never did anything simple, but would not listen. Human vessel, broadcast. This is High Arbiter of the Galaxy Council. You are surrounded. Surrender now and your crew will be allowed to live. Admiral Minu's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, old, but he was smiling. Arbiter, Minu said, you came a long way just to die. Laughed again. You are surrounded by 300,000 ships. Your planet is undefended, and you talk about death. You have lost, human, accept it. Have I? Minu glanced at something off-screen. Doctor, are we ready? Doctor's voice came through the speaker. Ready on your command, Admiral. frowned. "What is this? What are you doing?" Minyu looked back at the camera. "Do you know why humans are different, Arbiter? It is not because we are smarter or stronger or braver. It is because we have always known that we are mortal. We have always known that someday everything ends. So we do not fear death. We fear only living without meaning." He straightened in his chair. "You wanted to erase us from the galaxy. You wanted to make sure no one remembered we existed. But we will make sure the galaxy remembers this day forever." He turned to do it. Far away, orbiting the sun, 56 satellites activated simultaneously. They focused their arrays on a single point. They pushed and pulled at the solar surface with forces that humans barely understood. And the sun responded. A wave of fire erupted from the star. Not a natural flare, something directed, something controlled. A blade of pure stellar energy that swept through the inner system like the hand of an angry god. The Council fleet had no warning. Their ships were designed for the cold void, not for the surface of a star. Shields overloaded instantly. Electronics fried. Ships melted and burned and vaporized in seconds. High Arbiter had one moment to understand what was happening. One moment to realize that he had been wrong about everything. That the humans had turned their own star into a weapon. That they had been willing to sacrifice everything just to show the galaxy they could not be broken. Then his ship disappeared in fire, and he was gone. Commander Thrace survived. His ship had been at the edge of the fleet, far enough from the solar wave to escape with heavy damage. He watched as 90% of the fleet was destroyed in seconds. As the greatest armada in galactic history was reduced to ash by a species that should have been a footnote in history. On the Defiance, alarms screamed as the edge of the solar wave approached. The ship shook violently. Systems failed one by one. Admiral Minyu sat calmly in his chair. "Status. Heavy damage," reported. "But we are alive, the wave is passing." They had calculated it carefully. The Defiance was just far enough from the main blast to survive. Damaged, crippled, but alive. Minyu allowed himself a small smile. "Lieutenant, open a channel to the survivors." Obeyed. Minyu looked at the camera and spoke to what remained of the Council fleet. "This war is over," he said. "You can try to send more ships. You can try to rebuild your armada, but know this. Our sun has been waiting 4.5 billion years to protect us. It can wait a little longer. Come at us again and it will be waiting." He paused. "Or you can choose peace. You can accept that humanity has earned our place in the galaxy. The choice is yours." He ended the transmission and leaned back in his chair. Outside the window, the inner system was still glowing with the aftermath of the solar wave. Beautiful and terrible at the same time. Captain appeared beside him. She was bleeding from a cut on her forehead, but she was smiling. "We did it," she said. "We did." Minyu closed his eyes. "Now we see if it was enough." In the outer system, the civilian ships waited. 7 billion humans watched their screens and held their breath. They had just seen their sun used as a weapon. They had just seen their enemy destroyed by fire from their own star. And slowly, very slowly, they began to laugh. Not because it was funny, but because they were alive, because they had won, because they were human and that was what humans did. They laughed in the face of death, and death blinked first.